Are you hiding from your grocery bills? It's scary stuff. Suddenly, the drive to grow more of our own food has taken on a whole new level of urgency. Hi, I'm Ben, and in this video, I'm going to share 5 of my must-grow essential survival crops that will help keep both us and our wallets healthy. And if you're not sure how you will even be able to afford to get started, well, do stick around to the end when I'm going to share with you some simple ideas to get all the gear you need for pennies or less. The 5 crops I've chosen are all easy to grow, and that's important because we obviously want them to succeed. They are also either high in nutrients or calories, or both. And of course, I've chosen vegetables at the pricier end of the grocery shop because our goal here is to save money. Now, if you like the idea of saving money in the garden, do check out some of our other videos on this topic, and I'll pop some links to those down below. Now, we'll want an idea of how much produce we can harvest from our chosen crops. Now, to help with this, I'm going to take a standard pallet collar bed here as our unit for comparison. The beds are about 3 by 4 foot, that's 1 by 1.2 metres in size, and I reckon 5 of these, 1 for each crop, would make a really lovely garden, giving an appreciable amount to harvest. But if you don't have a garden, don't worry. All of the crops I'm going to mention can be grown in containers, and we'll do more on that when we get to them. So without further ado, let's count down our 5 must-grow, money-saving crops. Squash makes our list because it is both incredibly productive and has excellent storage ability. There are 2 types of squash, and I recommend growing both if you can. The first type is summer squash, which for the purposes of this video includes zucchini or courgettes. Summer squash crop repeatedly throughout the summer. They're incredibly productive. So if you've ever had a neighbour offer up their zucchini, well, there might be a reason behind that generosity. The second type of squash is our winter squash, which includes pumpkins. Now, these guys are ready to harvest right at the end of the season, and they will store right through the winter in some cases, offering their lovely, rich, delicious, nutrient-dense flesh for all sorts of recipes, soups, stews, roasting, you name it. They give something to eat during the really leanest months, so they're well worth growing. As I say, grow both of them if you can, but if you've only got the space for one, then perhaps concentrate on summer squash and zucchini, which will give you those lovely fruits throughout the summer. Expect to be harvesting your summer squash, zucchini or courgettes as soon as a month after planting. Then, so long as you keep picking them, they should keep on cropping right through to the first frost. Your winter squash or pumpkins will be harvested right at the end of the season in early autumn. You'll need to sow your seeds indoors, in the warm, then grow your seedlings on in a bright but frost-free place, ready to plant out after your last frost date in spring. Give them a sunny spot and plant into really rich soil. I improve mine by simply dumping on loads of garden compost in the weeks before planting. Keep plants well watered to ensure they remain in tip-top condition. You can grow 1 squash plant in a large container, but you definitely need to be on hand to keep it well watered. Over the course of summer, our reference raised bed should yield around $32 worth of zucchini or around $15 worth of winter squash. We of course need to include a root crop on our list. I had considered potatoes, but while they are dense in calories, they aren't exactly the most cost-effective crop to grow because you can pick up a bag for not very much at all. That said, if you do have the space, they are well worth growing because they're very easy to grow, and of course they are rich in those calories. And so it's the turn of beets or beetroot to come to our penny pinching rescue. Beets are awesome for a number of reasons. They're so good for us, there's no doubt about that. They're incredibly versatile. You can juice them, roast them, do all sorts of wonderful things with them. And if I lift one up here, you've got 2 crops for the effort of 1. You've got the roots, and then you've got the leaves, which can be cooked and used in exactly the same way you would use, say, spinach or chard. They're also really quick growing and remarkably pest free, so this really is an easy growing crop. Sow the chunky seeds 2 or 3 at a time into plug trays and then transplant the young seedlings once they've grown on. I like to space the clusters about a foot apart. Or just sow the seeds direct where they are to grow, then thin the seedlings that pop up to around 3 to 4 inches or 7 to 10 centimetres apart. Wherever you're growing them, keep your beets well watered to encourage speedy root development and to reduce the chances of plants bolting when they try to flower, which will affect the quality of the root. It's incredible that beets can be ready to harvest within about 10 weeks from sowing. But what about those all-important stats? Well, let's take a look. In our standard bed, there's room for around 42 plants, which should save you around $34. But bear in mind, you can re-sow, so the true saving over the course of one growing season is likely to be at least twice that. We have to have a leafy green on our list because they're so packed full of vitamins and minerals. So while they're not the most calorifically dense, they are really packing in the nutrients. Now I've chosen kale because it's exceptionally easy to grow and it crops throughout the winter months for many months at a time. It's really bulletproof. But you could also grow, say, cabbage for fermenting or making slaws, or perhaps chard, which is great for freezing. Now these kale are still a little bit on the small side, the result of a hot, dry summer, but with autumn rains now here, they should grow away really strongly before the winter. When you're harvesting kale, be sure to take the lowest, oldest leaves so that the ones at the centre, the younger ones, will grow on to give you your next harvest. Kale grows really well in containers. I pop about 3 into a decent sized container and keep them well watered, and boy do they grow away like triffids, giving lots and lots of those nutrient dense harvests. So let's look at the statistics. One bed with well spaced plants should save you around $37 at the grocery store. Beans are incredibly versatile. They can be stored in just so many ways: frozen, canned, dehydrated even. They're a great source of calories, but also a source of plant protein as well. Now there are different types. Here I've got some dwarf or bush beans, and I love these because they can be sown direct here, there and everywhere, following on from earlier crops. This lot followed on from a salad crop, and they were sown only a few months ago, and look, they're now ready to pick. But for me, the best way to grow them and the most space efficient is upwards, using climbing varieties of beans. These here are my runner beans, and once they start cropping, there's no reason you shouldn't be picking these beans for 3, even 4 months. So long as you keep picking them, they will keep producing them. For these types of beans, I prefer to sow them in pots, then plant them out as young plants after the danger of frost has passed. I love the way they frame the path here, but you could grow them up, say, a teepee of bamboo canes. If you haven't got much space, then they grow really well in containers, perhaps trained against some form of trellising, or if that doesn't work in your space, just stick to bush or dwarf beans. Now with all that said, let's look at the stats for our beans. Well, our standard raised bed could yield a potential saving of around $54. When we did a video on inflation busting crops back in the spring, linked to that one down below, many of you suggested peppers as a cash saving crop, especially American viewers where one pepper costs more than $1. That's twice as much as I pay here. But for me, it's tomatoes that are the clear winner. Now they're both very closely related, so I'm putting tomatoes and peppers as our final crop. Which you decide to grow will depend on the cost of these and of course how easy they are to grow in your climate. My summers are usually a little bit cooler, so tomatoes are the no-brainer here, and they are very prolific indeed. Both are started off in exactly the same way, in the warm in spring, then grown on and repotted in stages till they're ready for planting after your last frost. Peppers need minimal support, whereas vining varieties of tomato need tying in at regular intervals to support those hopefully weighty fruits. Both make excellent container crops. In fact, peppers are best grown in pots in cooler climates, so you can move them about to sit in the sunniest possible location, or perhaps somewhere protected. I'm lucky enough to have a greenhouse, but a sunny windowsill or balcony would do too. I improve the soil before planting with plenty of compost, just like I do for my squash. Then, when the plants are actively growing, I'll add a liquid tomato feed from time to time to help those fruits ripen up. And I do the same with peppers too. Prices vary a lot between countries, and remember the prices shown are just averages. Now for peppers, we have the potential to save ourselves $80, whereas for our tomatoes, we'll be saving at least $66. Now we've been through our 5 crops, but as a bonus, you've got to grow some herbs as well, because they take up very little space. Especially worth growing are perennial herbs. In this bed here, I've got some rosemary there, some oregano, thyme and mint, and then some space towards me here for quick growers like basil and parsley. If you don't have the space for a bed like this, then just grow some in a pot. I think this looks really beautiful, and I've got fresh herbs here to hand when I want them. Herbs are always sold in those little packets, and perhaps you only need a few snippings. Clearly having herbs on hand is going to save you money, it's more convenient, and of course you're going to get the freshest pickings. So what about the cost of growing all this stuff? Well, it doesn't need to cost the earth. Your first port of call for anything super cheap or even free are sites such as Gumtree or Craigslist. Check under the free section and look for things like old pots and containers, or perhaps there's some old lumber going begging, perfect for making your own raised bed. If you can't see what you want, then perhaps place your own advert. There are lots of other sites too, such as Free Cycle or Green Eco Services, or look in dumpsters and skips for any goodies, but don't forget to ask permission first. I've found several pallets this way for various projects, and people are only too happy to get rid of them usually. Now, I love things for free, who doesn't? And I'd love to know if you've dumpster dived before, what has been your best find? Let me know in the comments below. Don't buy pots for sowing or planting, raid the recycling bin instead. Old yogurt pots, ice cream tubs, fruit trays, they're all great for starting off seedlings to grow on and then plant outside. Now if you'd like more of that kind of stuff, check out our video on reusing old plastic bottles, link in the description. Once you get going, you'll be able to collect and save some of your own seeds. But to find seeds on the cheap now, well, look in discount stores. You can pick up packets for very little indeed there. Multi-packs are often cheaper than individual packets, and you can often get starter seed collections for not very much at all. And then in spring, do look out for local seed swaps, a great source of both cheap seeds and great advice. Potting mixes are an unavoidable cost, but one thing you can get for free is compost by, of course, making your own. And autumn is a great time to start your own heap. Rake up all those leaves, don't put those to waste. Add them onto your new compost bin as well. And a few months down the line, you'll have plenty of organic matter to feed those new growing areas of yours. You really don't need an armoury of tools to get started gardening. Now I just have 4 tools that I think are essentials: a hand fork, then a border fork for sort of digging and spreading things around, a rake for levelling compost, say, out on your beds, and then a trusty old watering can. If you're really getting into your gardening and have a bit more space, then you might like to consider investing in a hoe here for easy weeding to get through those annual weeds, and then a springtime rake for raking up leaves, and maybe a wheelbarrow and some pruners too. You really don't need much kit to get growing, and with my 5 must-grow, reliable, money-saving crops, you'll have everything to not just survive, but thrive too. If you haven't got much outdoor space, then do check out this video where I will show you what can be grown in an area no bigger than the average dining table, and there are some great ideas in there for low-cost pots. Thanks for your company today. Do subscribe if you haven't already, throw this video a like on your way out, and I will catch you next time.